Daniel chapter 5. King Belshazzar held a great feast for 1,000 of his nobles and was drinking wine in front of the 1,000. When Belshazzar tasted the wine, he issued an order to bring in the gold and silver vessels that Nebuchadnezzar his father had taken out of the temple in Jerusalem, so that the king and his nobles, his consorts, and his concubines could drink from them. So they brought the gold vessels that were taken out of the temple of the house of God in Jerusalem, and the king and his nobles, consorts, and concubines drank from them. They drank the wine and praised the gods made of gold and silver, bronze, iron, wood, and stone. At that very moment, the fingers of a human hand emerged and wrote on the plaster of the wall of the king's palace opposite the lampstand, so that the king could see the back of the hand that was writing. The color drained from the king's face. His thoughts alarmed him. His hips gave way, and his knees began knocking together. The king called loudly to summon the astrologers, the Chaldeans, the diviners. The king said to the wise men of Babylon, "Whoever reads this writing and tells me what it means will be clothed in purple and have gold chain around his neck, and will have authority as the third ruler in the kingdom." Then all the king's wise men came in, but they could not read the inscription nor tell the king what it meant. So King Belshazzar became even more terrified, and his face grew pale. His nobles were baffled. The queen, hearing the words of the king and his nobles, entered the banquet hall. The queen spoke out and said, "May the king live forever. Do not let your thoughts frighten you, or your face be so pale. There is a man in your kingdom who has the spirit of the holy gods in him. In the days of your father he was found to have insight and intelligence and wisdom like the wisdom of the gods. So King Nebuchadnezzar, your father, made him chief of the magicians, astrologers, Chaldeans, and diviners. This man Daniel, whom the king named Belteshazzar, was found to have extraordinary spirit, knowledge, and insight for interpreting dreams, explaining riddles, and solving problems. Now let Daniel be summoned, and he will explain the interpretation." So Daniel was brought before the king, and the king said to Daniel, "Are you Daniel, who was one of the captives of Judah that my father the king brought from Judah? I have heard about you, how a spirit of the gods is in you, and how there has been found in you insight, discernment, and extraordinary wisdom. Just now the wise men and diviners were brought before me to read this writing and to make its meaning known to me, but they are unable to declare its interpretation. However, I have heard about you that you are able to provide interpretation and to solve difficult problems. Now, if you are able to read the writing and explain to me its meaning, you will be clothed in purple and have a gold chain around your neck and have the authority to rule as the third in the kingdom." Then Daniel answered the king, saying, "You may keep your gifts for yourself and give your rewards to someone else. Nevertheless, I will read the writing to the king and tell him its meaning. Your Majesty, God Most High, have your father Nebuchadnezzar the kingdom gave your father Nebuchadnezzar the kingdom, as well as greatness, glory, and splendor. Because of the grandeur that he bestowed on him, all the peoples, nations, and languages dreaded and feared him. He killed whomever he wanted and spared anyone he wanted. He raised up whoever he wished and humbled anyone he wished. But when his heart became haughty and his spirit hardened with pride, he was deposed from his royal throne and stripped of his glory. He was driven away from among men, and his mind became like an animal, and his dwelling was with the wild asses. He fed on grass like an ox, and his body was damp with the dew of heaven, until he recognized that God Most High is sovereign over the realm of mankind, and that he sets up over it whomever he wills. But you, his son Belshazzar, have not humbled your heart, even though you knew all this. Instead, you have exalted yourself against the Lord of heaven. You had the vessels of his house brought before you, and you and your nobles, your consorts, and your concubines have been drinking wine in them. You have praised the gods made of silver and gold, of bronze and iron, wood and stone, which cannot see or hear or understand. Yet you did not honor the God who holds in his hand your very breath and all your ways. Therefore the hand was sent from him that wrote this inscription. Now this is the writing that was inscribed. Mene, mene, tekel uparsin. That is the interpretation of the inscription. Mene, God has numbered the days of your reign and brought it into an end. Tekel, you have been weighed in the balances and found wanting. Peres, your kingdom has been divided and given to the Medes and Persians. Then at Belshazzar's command they clothed Daniel with purple, put a chain of gold around his neck, and issued a proclamation about him that he would have the authority as third ruler in the kingdom. On that very night King Belshazzar of the Chaldeans was slain. Chapter 6. So Darius the Mede took over the kingdom at the age of 62. It pleased Darius to appoint 120 satraps to rule throughout the whole kingdom, with 3 administrators over them, one of whom was Daniel. These satraps were accountable to them, so that the king would not be troubled. Now this Daniel was distinguishing himself among the supervisors and satraps because he had an extraordinary spirit in him. In fact, the king planned to appoint him over the entire kingdom. At this time, the supervisors and satraps tried to find ground for a charge against Daniel regarding the kingdom, but they were unable to find fault or corruption because he was trustworthy and no negligence or dishonesty could be found in him. Finally, these men said, "We're not going to find any basis for charges against this man Daniel unless we find something against him regarding the law of his God." So these supervisors and satraps went in to the king as a group and said to him, "King Darius, live forever. All the supervisors of the realm, the magistrates and satraps, ministers and governors, have all agreed that the king should issue an edict and enforce a decree that anyone who prays to any god or man for 30 days other than you, O king, will be cast into the lion's den. Now, O king, issue the decree and put it in writing so that it may not be altered according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be repealed." Thereupon, King Darius issued the written decree. Now when Daniel learned that a written decree had been issued, he went into his house, where the windows in its upper room opened toward Jerusalem. 3 times a day he knelt down, prayed, and gave thanks before his God, just as he did before. Then these men came as a group and found Daniel praying and making supplication before his God. So they approached the king and spoke to him about the royal decree. "Didn't you issue a written decree that anyone who prays to any god or man for 30 days except for you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions?" The king replied, "The decree stands according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be repealed." Then they answered and said to the king, "Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, O king, or to the decree that you put in writing. He still prays 3 times a day." When the king heard this report, he was deeply distressed, and he set his mind on how he might rescue Daniel. Until sunset he struggled to find a way to save him. Then these men came as a throng in to the king and said to the king, "Remember, O king, that it is a law of the Medes and Persians that no decree or edict which the king issues may be altered." So the king gave the order, and Daniel was brought and thrown into the lion's den. Now the king spoke to Daniel, saying, "May your God, whom you serve, continually deliver you." A stone was brought to block the mouth of the den. The king sealed it with his own signet ring and with the signet of his nobles, so that nothing could be changed regarding Daniel. Then the king went to his palace and passed the night fasting. No entertainment was brought before him. He was unable to sleep. At dawn, the king got up and hurried to the lion's den. As he reached the den, he cried out to Daniel with a voice of anguish. The king spoke out to Daniel, saying, "Daniel, servant of the living God, was your God, whom you serve continually, able to rescue you from the lions?" Daniel spoke to the king, "May the king live forever. My God sent his angel to shut the lion's mouth so that they haven't harmed me, because I was found innocent before him. nor have I committed any crime against you, O king." Then the king was overjoyed and ordered Daniel taken up out of the den. So Daniel was lifted out of the pit. No injury of any kind was found on him because he had trusted in his God. At the king's command, those men who had maliciously accused Daniel were brought and thrown into the lion's den, they, their children, and their wives. They had not even reached the bottom of the pit before the lions overpowered them and crushed their bones. Then King Darius wrote to all the peoples, nations, and languages dwelling in all the earth, "May your peace be abundant. I issue a decree that in all the dominion of my kingdom people are to tremble with fear before the God of Daniel, for he is the living God, enduring forever. His kingdom will never be destroyed, his dominion will never end. He delivers and rescues. He performs signs and wonders in the heavens and on earth. He has delivered Daniel from the power of the lions." So Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian. Chapter 7. In the first year of the king Belshazzar of Babylon, Daniel had a dream, and visions passed through his mind as he was on his bed. He wrote down a summary of the dream. Daniel said, "I was looking in my vision at night, and behold, the 4 winds of heaven were churning up the great sea. 4 huge beasts came up from the sea, each different from the others. The first was like lion, the eagle's wings. As I watched, its wings were pulled off, and it was lifted off the ground. It was made to stand up upon 2 feet like a man, and heart of human was given to it. And behold, there before me was another beast, a second one, like a bear. It raised itself up on one side. It had 3 ribs in its mouth, and between its teeth. It was told, 'Arise, devour much flesh.' After that I looked, and behold, there was another one like a leopard. On its back it had 4 wings like those of a bird. The beast also had 4 heads, and it was given authority to rule. After this, in my vision at night, I looked, and behold, there was a 4th beast, terrifying, frightening, tremendously strong, with large iron teeth. It devoured and crushed, and anything that was left it trampled with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that came before it. It had 10 horns. While I was pondering the horns, behold, another horn, a small one, sprang up between them, and 3 of the first horns were uprooted before it. Then behold, this thorn had eyes resembling human eyes, and a mouth speaking boastfully. While I was watching, thrones were set up, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. His garment was as white as snow, and the hair of his head like pure wool. His throne was ablaze with flames, its wheels burning fire. A river of fire was flowing and coming out from before him. Thousands of thousands attended him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The court was seated, and the books were opened. I kept watching because of the boastful word that the horn was speaking. I continued watching until the beast was slain and its body destroyed and thrown into the blazing fire. As for the rest of the beasts, their dominion had been taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. I was watching in the night visions. Behold, one like a son of man, coming with the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient of Days and was brought into his presence. Dominion, glory, and sovereignty were given to him, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that will never pass away, and his kingdom is one that will not be destroyed. As for me, Daniel, my spirit was disturbed within me, and the visions of my head alarmed me. I approached one of those standing nearby and asked him the true meaning of all this. So he spoke with me and revealed the interpretation of these things. These large beasts, 4 in number, are 4 kings that will rise from the earth. But the Kedoshim of the Most High will receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever. Yes, forever and ever. Then I wanted to know the true meaning of the 4th beast that was different from all the others, exceedingly terrifying with iron teeth and bronze claws, which broke in pieces and devoured, and 10 stomped with its feet anything that remained. Of the 10 horns on its head, the other horn that sprang up before which 3 others fell, that horn had eyes and a mouth speaking arrogant things, and its appearance was more imposing than its companions. As I was watching, that horn was waging war against the Kedoshim and overpowering them, until the Ancient of Days came and judgment was rendered in favor of the Kedoshim of the Most High. Then the time came and the Kedoshim possessed the kingdom. Thus he explained, the 4th beast will be a 4th kingdom on earth that will be different from all the other kingdoms. It will devour the whole earth and trample it, crush it. As for the 10 horns, out of his kingdom 10 kings will rise. Another will arise after them, but he will be different from the previous ones. He will subdue 3 kings. He will speak words against the Most High, and will continually harass the Kedoshim of the Most High, and will try to change the appointed times and laws. The Kedoshim will be handed over to him for a times and half a time, but the court will still, and the court will sit, and he will be stripped of his power and be destroyed and abolished for all time. Then the kingdom, power, and greatness of the kingdoms under all heaven will be given to the people of the Kedoshim of the Most High. Their kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions will serve and obey him. This is the conclusion of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my thoughts greatly troubled me, and the color drained from my face, but I kept the matter in my heart.